Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Steven with Freeze Peach Gaming. This is where I talk about pop culture, politics, and where the two collide. Today we're sticking with the pop culture side of things as I'm doing my episode 3 review of The Witcher Season 2, titled What is Lost? First thing I want to address at the beginning is someone had pointed out in the comments of my previous video that I had mixed up Eskel and Lambert. Lambert in the games is the one who has the dry sense of humor. Eskel, you don't see much of him in the books, really, at least as far as I've read. And in the game, he's much more of like the paramount of what a Witcher is meant to be. He's very much, he doesn't get involved in any politics. He doesn't involve himself whatsoever in the going-ons of the nobles. He does simple, easy jobs. He gets paid for what he does, and he really doesn't show emotion. Whether or not it's something that's been brainwashed out of him through training, or if it's actually from the mutations, he really does not show his emotions. He is what a Witcher should strive to be. So I did mix those characters up, but nonetheless, it's kind of, I guess they're doing their own thing with the character there, but I don't know. Still didn't like that character of Eskel. We did get early on in the episode that quick flashback of Eskel and Geralt, similar to what I had mentioned in the previous episode should have happened before Geralt had to make his choice between Eskel and Vesemir. I still think that needed to happen before that moment, so we could have had some pre-established weight to the decision that Geralt had made there, and, after the fact, it just doesn't feel as good, doesn't feel quite as strong. I did like his, sort of funeral they had going there, this ritualistic feeding to the wolves, almost, that they did, which, as far as I know, doesn't have any pre-established lore backing it up, so I believe that was something the showrunners and the writers did, and I think it was actually a good addition that they allowed to occur naturally without having to make it feel forced, unlike other aspects of the show that we're getting into now. The council's hatred of the elves, and I didn't like a lot of the council stuff in this episode, but particularly their hatred of the elves. Besides going against the lore that was established in the book, as I talked about in my previous review, there's nothing in the lore from the books or the games that the council does not like elves. In fact, there is an elf on the council, and the other council members even use elves to their advantage at certain times. So it feels contrived, and it feels much like the restriction to fire magic, like it was entirely designed to establish some sort of conflict between Yen and Stregobor, which I just don't think needed to be there. I feel like Stregobor could have simply just, for the same reasons he laid out in the show, not trusted Yen, because her journey from, having lost her magic, well, she doesn't reveal she's lost her magic yet, but her journey of having survived the Battle of Sodden, having been captured by the Nilfgaardians, to then be captured by elves, and then be set free and just sent on her way and returning to Aretuza seems rather convenient, and he's never really had any trust for Yennefer, so I feel like that alone would have been a perfectly good reason for him to have issues with her and want to dig deeper into her story and how she actually got there, rather than having some racial element, which I feel like it's just not as strong of an argument because he happened to have been mutilated by a quadrelf in the past as well. Now he hates quarter elves and all elves, and there was one quarter elf woman who went mad and murdered a bunch of people and killed a bunch of people, and now he's just racist against all elves. I don't know. I didn't like it. It seemed contrived, didn't seem necessary at all. Shortly after that, we have a pretty good scene, though. Triss and Yen hanging out in the pool afterwards, and it shows sort of a good dichotomy between the characters, a good showing of the differences. How Triss is learning to live with her new scarred life, where her body is literally scarred, and she could do something about it, but she's choosing to go forward with her new form and learn to live with herself, whereas Yen can't even admit to her friend or to her mentor that she herself has lost her magic. and she typically only focuses on what she can't have and never looks at the means, but just focuses on the ends. She wants to get her magic back. She doesn't think about how she's going to get her magic back. I like that scene. Hopefully the writers expound upon that a little bit more, but, we'll see. Then after that, we have the obstacle course scene with Lambert and Ciri, and I don't know that third Witcher's name who's there. But I did actually like how Lambert goes from mocking Ciri to sort of pushing her harder in her training and giving her advice, even if he's mocking in that advice as well. I thought it was a good way for the characters to sort of gain some understanding of each other and to no longer have as much of an adversarial relationship. Then after that scene, we have Geralt fumbling with trying to be a parent. Come here, kitty. So Geralt is sort of fumbling with trying to be a fatherly figure for Ciri. And the way they do this, I actually thought was very well. He's trying to prepare her for the dangers of the world and trying to share some of his philosophy with her, but he does it in the same sort of gruff and gallows humor way that he would talk to any other person out there. He just does it in a softer tone. And all of this, he's doing this, it shows that he really just doesn't know how to talk to a young woman. And I thought that whole scene right there was pretty solid, pretty well done. He's trying to be the parent that he said he would be when he made the called for the law of surprise, but he's really not prepared for it, but he's still trying his best. And Ciri, being a teenage girl, isn't really going to listen to him right away. It's going to take some time for the lessons to actually set in, and she's going to have to most likely learn these lessons the hard way on her own for them to actually have impact on her later on in life. After that, there's a couple other scenes after that. We have the monster fight in this episode, which once again just felt muted and short like the previous episode, but not only that, it felt frankly unnecessary. I mean, really think about it. What purpose did that fight scene serve? Other than to have some modicum of action in the episode, and I guess if you really want to stretch it, it showed that Geralt is finally lending some credence to Ciri's visions, which really he doesn't have to have any sort of understanding of Ciri's visions, because, spoilers alert, he's probably going to, most likely what's happening is Triss is now going up to Kaer Morhen, because that's how the second book starts. By the way, if the next episode starts with Triss showing up at Kaer Morhen, that's how the second book starts. So we're already like 4 episodes into the start of this actual story, if they're following along with the books. But also, if we're going to continue the lore that's been established in previous episodes, that Leshy is not dead. If fire through the heart is the only way to kill it, then it being ripped to pieces by what I'm assuming is the demon that had killed Vesemir's mentor, then it should be alive. And also, was that creature supposed to be the demon that had killed Vesemir's mentor? Because I believe that's what he had said. How the guy had died is that he had died in the woods outside of Kaer Morhen to a demon. So I don't know. And was that whole scene's real purpose then to teach Ciri something about, the absence of perfection means death or whatever? I don't know. It didn't mesh for me. It felt wrong. It just felt forced, like they really wanted to have at least a short action scene in this episode that's meant to be more set up for the future. The whole thing felt unnecessary and forced to me. Then we go to the monument on Sodden Hill, which I gotta go right there, because in the books, it wasn't a gift from the kings, but it was the common folk who lived in Sodden had donated their money and their skills and their time to actually make the monument themselves in gratitude and remembrance of the mages, which to me makes more sense because the kings, they have thousands of subjects that are dying, especially as soon as war breaks out. Thousands of their subjects are dying. Are they really going to take the time out of their day and their money and everything that's involved in planning a monument for 14 mages who made a sacrifice at Sodden Hill? I just don't think that's something that a king would be concerned about so much as a commoner would care about, because for the commoner, that's their actual lives and their homes that were saved because of what the mages did there. The kings typically view they view everyone around them other than other kings as beneath them, as essentially their property and under their fealty. So I don't know. Also, let's talk about the ending itself. Why were the kings of the north even there in the first place? Did they really all show up and go to one frickin' place, which makes the entire north very weak, because every single king getting killed at one time would be pretty frickin' bad, and it didn't seem like they had a lot of guards there with them when they're under constant threat of another attack from Nilfgaard. Why are they all in one place to see one Nilfgaardian get beheaded? And it's not like this guy was a general or something. I mean, they build him up to be much more than he actually is, at least in the books, intentionally. He's really essentially like a lieutenant who, I mean, he's an officer, he's a knight, he has more training, and he has more titleship above the other soldiers, but with all of that considered, he's just a lieutenant, essentially. He had a job to go get Ciri, and essentially he failed in that job. And once again, a bit more spoilers for the books, and maybe they get into this later on in the show, but in the books, that character is really used to explore Ciri's fear and her choices that she's going to make in the future, whether or not she's going to attack her fear with anger, because essentially she's constantly haunted by these images of the Blackwing helmed knight, and she finally gets to confront him toward the end of the second book. So maybe that'll happen in this series. She finally gets to confront him toward the end of the second book, and she beats him in a sword fight and then takes his helmet off, and she's ready to behead this man. She's ready to kill him and take out all of her vengeance and remove her fear by chopping its head clean off. And she sees that it's just another man. He looks very plain, normal to her, and she is now struggling with, does she want to become a murderer? This isn't some horrible monster that she's fighting. This is just another human. And so it adds a lot of conflict to that scene, to that idea, and it works a lot better for her character, which with this, they're just about to behead him or something. I don't know if he's going to get into his armor again, if he's going to go back to his old ways, what have you. But that felt weird. And Yen being charged with beheading him, I guess as some sort of way to show her loyalty to the council, but that doesn't feel very mage directed to me. Like a mage is, oh, we need her to show her loyalty, have her cut off the Nilfgaardian's head. Like, didn't she kill a couple hundred, if not like 1,000 of these dudes at the Battle of Sodden? Like, she's killed a lot of people, and why is she now conflicted with, rather than burning them to death, she now has to chop a head off? Like, I don't know, that feels weird now that she's conflicted and has some sort of moral conscience about killing somebody. That, I don't know, it didn't feel necessary. It once again felt like the writers had an end that they had to fill in, and they didn't allow things to occur naturally to get to an end point. I will say I was actually surprised with the ending. I expected for Yen to take the axe and throw it down and give some sort of speech to the kings of the council to try and change their minds on the whole situation. And essentially, I didn't think it would have worked. I thought it would have put her into deeper shit, in that she would have just angered the kings, and it would have strengthened the resolve of her detractors in the council. And from there, she would have to make some sort of daring escape. But I mean, I'd say her running away at the end is much stronger than her giving in and chopping his head off or making some sort of speech that backfires. The only part of it that I don't like is how, okay, I understand steel is not as brittle as iron, and generally speaking, steel will cut through iron, but a trim, thin woman, slight stature, thin woman, swinging an axe at iron manacles that are around a man's wrists, probably not going to just slice straight through them. Also, I mean, she's never been trained in combat. She doesn't really know how to swing an axe. So even if she was to cut his head off, she'd probably botch it the first couple of swings, and it would take several hacks to get through it. But just in a single swing, she doesn't break his wrists, one, by cutting through the chain, slices straight through it, and then she goes and chops straight through, without much effort, 2 logs that are holding up, those big, bonfire things, which, I mean, they looked cool, but she just chops straight through it, and not even against the grain. She chops into the grain of the wood and just straight up obliterates that shit. I want somebody to take a slight-statured, thin female who's never swung an axe in her life and take her outside and get her to split a log. An log. I would like to see that happen. I'm sure it could. I'm not saying women can't do that, but it takes a little bit of training. I mean, men don't get it right on the first time. I started learning to split wood when I was like 7, and I still don't always get it right every single time, but I'm pretty good at it. I can chop wood if I need to. I don't, because I don't live in an area that's really cold. I don't need cords of wood to throw into a fucking wood-burning stove in the basement to keep my house warm, but that's nonetheless, I'm getting off topic here. I felt that it at least fit her current predicament in the way her character is currently growing in the show. I don't know, overall I don't like how Yen's character is portrayed in the show as opposed to the books or the games. She's really meant to be a strong and firm and a woman of iron, iron-willed and very powerful. And she really typically only shows moments of weakness specifically to Geralt in behind closed doors. So I guess that's still fitting there that she's not going to admit her weakness to other people, but I don't know, there's something about it. I can't exactly put my finger on it. I'm not so big on the portrayal of her character in this. Overall, my review on this episode is kind of lukewarm. It really felt like this episode was meant to establish things that are going to happen further on in the future, but it at the same time had a lot of filler, and a lot of that filler didn't feel particularly necessary. I mean, Ciri's training part, yeah, that was cool. Her and Geralt going off into the forest to fight a demon felt weird, kind of unnecessary and contrived. The whole race relations between the elves and the council, I guess that's another thing that's designed to build up more into the future. But I just feel like there's better ways to do it. It kind of goes against the pre-established lore. So we'll see where this show goes in the future. But overall, this episode was kind of lukewarm. I'd say probably a 2 out of 5 overall. Not the best episode they've had so far. I mean, it wasn't horrible, but it's not one I would go out of my way to watch again. Either way, ladies and gentlemen, that's all I have for today. You can find me here on YouTube. You can also find me on Odysee and Rumble. Please consider giving me a like. Give me any of your thoughts down in the comments below, and consider sharing this video out on social media. That helps me out a whole lot. If you want to hear me talk about things that are a bit more political, you can find me on the Underground Resistance podcast over on Supreme Heretics channel. I'll link that in the description below. And I think that's about all I have for today, ladies and gentlemen. Have a wonderful day, and never be afraid to speak your mind.